All right, welcome to explainED. Today we have a return guest, Adam Sparks. Renee is here as well, and Sean too.
I'm also here.
Yeah,
Again.
so that's great. Adam, you are our very first guest, and we're grateful that you agreed to return. That's positive feedback for us.
No, I'm excited to be back.
So we usually start the show with a little bit about you. So I think that that's important to do again. But then we want to change up the second question. Okay, so normally we ask you, what does AI mean to you? But we've already asked you that.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you're going to tell us about any updates in your landscape since the last time we talked to you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm honored to be back and to be here twice and to get to talk with you all again. Yeah, my name's Adam Sparks. I taught English and social studies for 7 years, mostly in Nebraska, where I'm from. And that was like middle school and high school social studies and English. And I finished my master's at Stanford 3 years ago now, in learning design and technology. And as a part of that master's, I built what was supposed to be a project. We called it Short Answer, and it was going to be this formative assessment platform based around peer-to-peer feedback. And we got some grant funding and launched it, and decided to work on it as a startup. And since putting out into the world and teachers telling us they use it for writing and basically writing only, we have kind of pivoted to focus specifically on writing. So it's a 3rd through 12th grade writing platform. It's all based around peer-to-peer interaction and students writing and sharing their writing with each other and providing feedback to one another on their writing, and just sort of short form gamified writing you can embed across the curriculum. And we're in the process of augmenting that with AI. And I'm happy to talk about updates since you asked. But I think we kind of talked about this last time, but it's been an interesting time to be in writing instruction. And I mentioned this in some of our emails before we got on, like when we were organizing this talk, but there are like huge philosophical questions, I think, that are being raised about the meaning and the value of writing in 2025 in a world where machines can now write for us, at least in theory. And I would love to talk about that with you all if you want to. But yeah, so I'm happy to talk about updates or wherever, but that's me. And I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, we weren't actually going to ask you anything about writing, but we can pivot for you.
No, we don't have to. It's all good.
No, actually, we've had a lot of guests that have been connected to writing, either directly or indirectly. A lot of folks in the humanities area and things like that. It's been really interesting to dig into that crossroads of thinking about AI being a language-based, largely the large language models being language-based, and the irony that we're facing in terms of the writing genre. Like what are we doing with critical thinking and expression and all of those things? So we would love to dig into that with you, wherever you want to start with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm happy to dive into it. I don't know, where you want to start, but
why don't you start with maybe you and I emailed and you mentioned a recent study out of Cornell that talked about LLMs and writing. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, and it's not. So I should preface this. My wife turned me onto this paper, but it's not published yet, so it's not peer reviewed. So take it with a grain of salt or whatever. But if you Google search it, it's called "Poor Alignment and Steerability of Large Language Models: Evidence from College Admission Essays," and it's from researchers out of Cornell. So if your listeners Google it, they should be able to find it. But to massively oversimplify it, they basically research team looked at 30,000 admissions essays that were written by undergrads prior to AI being released, meaning like ChatGPT being released to the public. So like 2019, 2020. And then they compared those to essays that were written using the same prompts, responding to the same admissions prompts, but they had LLMs respond to them. And then interestingly, they had LLMs respond to them pretending to be the students that had written the original one. So using the same demographic data and it basically being like, all right, I want you to sound like a 18-year-old Asian girl who's from a first generation, blah, blah, blah. And what they found was LLMs do not sound at all like what humans sound like. They're wholly separate things, and have their own unique, distinct, but also like just kind of generic writing style. And some of the questions they raise in it that I think we should be talking about more in education is just how much AI runs the risk of homogenizing all of our writing and essentially like erasing our voices. And we all just start to sound the same because we're all using the same tool to help us write. Because like a huge part of what we talk about, even if I don't know if it's as popular as it once was, but like at one point in K-12, the 6 traits of writing was a common framework for teaching writing. I don't know if it was popular in Vermont or not, but like one of those 6 kind of core pillars of effective writing is like your voice and being able to express who you are through your writing. And I do worry about, as we embed more AI into writing curricula and just like as we embed AI tools into K-12 schools, I worry about homogenizing students' voices essentially by giving them feedback that's encouraging them to all sound the same. Now, some of that is not. I'm just kind of forming my own conclusions off of this paper. But I don't know. I was fascinated by it, and if you, it's worth Googling the paper because they actually have like the statistical modeling they did to sort of like map and chart the differences between the writing. They have these charts that are really powerful that literally are like, here are where the students is writing and what it looks like, and here's what ChatGPT writing looks like, and it's like completely different spheres. So I don't know. It just like, as someone who is building a writing tool and trying to think about how do we intentionally and meaningfully incorporate AI into it in a way that improves student writing outcomes, it was an interesting paper to read because it makes you very worried about like, man, how do we incorporate this stuff without doing it in a way where we're like erasing students' voices because it's giving AI feedback that's encouraging them to all sound the same. So I'm nervous about that. I don't know if you all have thoughts on that, but that's kind of where my mind was and why I mentioned that paper in the email.
I just want to do a little shout out to our listeners as well, because you are actually an ed tech vendor, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the conversations we had with a guest recently was around the ethics and morality of the ed tech space right now, and just how important and impressive it is that you, who has a writing tool in that space, is making sure to ask those questions about voice and, all of those things. So I just want to, send that shout out to you and to make sure that our listeners know that that's a really important thing and really valuable thing that you're doing, just even being aware of it and asking those tough questions of yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's this really sick irony about you really appreciating this paper and then what you're doing during the day. It's really great.
I appreciate you saying that. And that's a whole other conversation about the alignment of the incentives of for-profit ed tech and the incentives of for impact schools. And we are a for-profit. I'm not trying to like throw stones in glass houses, but we've gone about building Short Answer in a way where we're able to focus on impact and able to focus on research and just making sure that what we're building is good for schools and good for kids. And I'm not saying other ed techs aren't doing that, but I do think that if and when, this is a whole other conversation, I don't mean to open a can of worms, but if and when like institutional investment gets involved in K-12 and it just becomes about scale and growth and like just build something people will use and pay for, I do sometimes think this sort of, I don't know, thoughtfulness kind of gets lost. And it's disheartening. But I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole other conversation. But I appreciate you saying that.
Do you feel pressure to incorporate AI into your product?
Yeah, I do. Because it's demanded. Like it's not that it's like teachers are asking us for it. So it's this interesting thing where it's like we want to do it because there is, like, I've led professional development sessions because we lead workshops with, as you know, Renee, we lead workshops with schools on writing instruction. And And I've had teachers get like verklempt, like not crying, but like emotional when we show them tools, because it's like, oh my God, this is going to save me literally hours, like not even exaggerating, like 10 to 20 hours a week of my life. Like I can get my Sundays back and spend time with my family again, which is a whole other conversation about like, why have we structured K-12 teaching jobs in a way where we're asking so much of teachers outside of schools? But at the same time, that's incredibly powerful. And I don't want to like just ignore all that. There's tremendous potential and power in using these tools, but doing so in a way that also aligns with best practices in teaching and learning is much harder than it sometimes appears. And so I think that's the tricky part, is like, and this is what we talk about in the workshops. It's like finding the middle ground where you can harness AI's benefits while also mitigating its risks and some of the downsides of AI is very, very hard in practice when you really get into the trenches. And so that's where I'd like to think that's where we're working right now in the design work we're doing, but also in what we're building at Short Answer.
Right. So I would have and I don't know if it is like AI resistant activity or program or something. Is that a term you would resent, or?
I think it's wishful thinking, honestly. I see a lot of blog posts about like tips for making your assignment AI resistant. And I think there's something to that a little bit around like, and actually this paper kind of supports that, the one I just referenced. Like AI is not very good at writing like personal reflection type of stuff. So when you're thinking about how do AI approve my assignment, adding more personal reflection can be helpful. But ultimately, I just think we're headed to a world where AI can basically do just about anything that you throw at your kids. And that doesn't devalue that task. That's actually a pet peeve I have. I go to a lot of ed tech conferences, and I often hear this expression of like, AI can do this now, so is it really worth teaching our kids? And it's like, AI can do like anything now. So like, if you follow that to its logical conclusion, like we shouldn't teach our kids anything at a certain point as AI gets better. That's obviously ridiculous. Like we still need to establish foundational content knowledge and skills with kids. So just because AI can do it doesn't mean it's not valuable to teach to kids. And I do think that the concept of AI proofing is wishful thinking. I think when we think about instruction and assessment when it comes to AI, to me it's about finding a balance of like telling kids when they can and cannot use AI and being intentional about teaching both of those trajectories of like, here's how and why we're going to do this assignment without AI, and why I want you to develop these skills on your own. And then if we are going to have you use AI, here's how we're going to assess your ability to use it effectively. I'm just trying to find a balance in those.
And so when I think of Short Answer, I think of that as an AI resistant activity, right? Now I know you're including AI now, but just the way you use Short Answer does not lend itself to AI, or at least it didn't, because that's not the point. It's not centered on AI at all. How has that changed, or has that not changed? But just like how have you decided to incorporate AI?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, very much Short Answer is built for just short form in class writing, and so it's quote unquote AI resistant in the sense that you're doing it in class usually. And so just through kind of basic classroom management skills, you can have a better sense of how or if AI is influencing student writing. But the way that we've incorporated AI, we just launched an activity about a month ago now. It's called Quick Write. And it's instead of peer-to-peer feedback, it's AI feedback based on each success criterion set by the teacher. So it's like, the kids submit their writing and then they'll get a score for each success criterion on a 1 to 3 scale, 1 being like beginner, 2 being intermediate, 3 being proficient. And then it provides feedback on why it scored you at that proficiency level. But then for each one, you're earning points. So it's a cooperative activity where like the class is trying to hit a score goal together. So it's incorporating AI feedback on the students' writing, but it's all happening after they've done the writing. The students aren't interacting with AI while they're writing in that activity. So it's like submit your writing, get the feedback, and then what we've had a lot of teachers do is like, all right, now use that feedback and revise what you wrote, and let's resubmit and see if we can get a higher class score together, essentially. And so, yeah, it's all taking place in class, so you can monitor AI's influence, which in this case is just feedback after students have done the task. And And so that was our first kind of student-facing AI in short answer. And so far the feedback has been super positive on it. And the one that the next feature that we're building now that is not yet in the app that I'm happy to talk about too is called Pen Pals. It's going to be a new activity type where it's almost using AI as like a foil in the classroom to talk about what effective feedback looks like, but also to sort of embed, and this is a term I would love to talk with you guys about, but embed AI literacy in the experience. So the way it'll work is students submit the writing the way they always do in short answer, but then the teacher will select from 6 pre-created like AI characters that we're calling pen pals. And so it's like Surly Sam and Bubbly Bo, and they all have their own personality. So Surly Sam's angry and Bubbly Bo is like a bro, but like a supportive bro. That's like, he's like your hype man. And these AI characters like have debates about student responses. And then the teacher facilitates a discussion about that debate, if that makes any sense. So it's like these AI characters have an argument, and then the kids talk amongst themselves about which character do they agree with and why, and they vote on it. And then they do some self-reflection. So it's almost like, here's the student's response. Here's these AI characters having an argument about the response. What do we think about that? So it's like using AI as a sort of foil to like discuss what effective feedback looks like and to hopefully get kids to think critically about the writing in the process. But the teacher is mediating all of that. It's not students interacting one-on-one, and hopefully it's more peer-to-peer and discussion-based. So, sorry, Sean, that was a really long-winded response to your.
No, that's great. So, but just to be clear, the children aren't really interacting with the characters, right?
No. The teacher selects the response, and then those characters will interact with that response. But then the kids are interacting with each other, sort of debating the pen pal's reaction to the response. Sorry, I know there's like multiple layers to that.
No, I get it. Yeah, no, that's good. I just, and I understood it the first time, but I just wanted to make like super clear, especially in light of how common sense, that report that came out about character AI. And, I wanted to avoid any confusion on the part of our listener or listeners.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. We are not trying to create little AI characters that will become the friends of your students. I think that's dystopian and weird, honestly.
Right.
No, this is more.
Zuckerberg's already on that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah, I saw that. How we're all going to have AI.
Oh, there goes our meta sponsor.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Now, Adam, did you hear? And this reminds me a little of that. And I don't know that much about it, but those researchers that like unleashed their bots on Reddit, but didn't tell the people in the subreddits that they were, being tested on. And so,
yeah, I did hear about this.
So and obviously that has nothing to do with your features on your product. But what I love is that from the sound of it, part of the AI literacy that will be in short answer now is that kids can see how persuasive an AI can be. And so you can talk about like, boy, this bro character is so confident that he's right about this, or they or it. But it sounds confident, but look at all the holes we can actually poke into the argument it's making. I'm imagining this now, of course, since it's an unreleased feature, but.
No, that's exactly the goal. It's like the whole point of the activity is to get kids to challenge and question AI outputs. But hopefully in a way that's fun and that feels like a game and something kids want to do. But yeah, just the way we've structured the activity, the goal is to challenge them and think critically about it. So hopefully it's showing them like they shouldn't just take AI outputs at face value. They need to question, critically think, all the things.
You need to know that all 3 of us did that brutally honest chat prompt recently where we got all the feedback, and Renee and I required a couple days of unpacking after that.
I needed therapy after.
Yeah, it was a little rough. Sean was fine, but we were a little rough after that. But I wanted to ask you a question. So
yeah.
And I can't really articulate this well, but I've had this conversation a couple times with people here that I work with, where we have used AI to take our conversations to a level that we never would have gotten to before. We're talking at higher levels about higher things, like one of our other guests said, not just doing things better, but doing better things. Because school systems and change are really slow, we've been able to accelerate some changes with the use of AI. And I can't articulate what we've done right or what we've done well. We're learning. But what I do recognize is that we're having conversations at a level that we never would have done. How do we do that with writing and voice for students when thinking about AI? I hear what you're saying about, being thoughtful about when we use it and when we don't. But if we think about a student's writing experience, it is oftentimes capped at the goal of the class or the summative or the whatever, when we could be taking student writing experience beyond for students wherever they cap out. Like, how do we do that in a really thoughtful way? Does that make sense?
Makes sense. It's a really good question. You got me thinking. My mind immediately goes to like, you have to make sure that the kids have the baseline skills first. I think before you're able to have some of those higher order, because I've noticed that in my own writing, like, because I will still write, my blog post on my own. But I've gotten into the habit of like, because oftentimes I'm writing very opinionated, sort of like, this is Adam's rant on his Substack. And so I'll put that into ChatGPT and just be like, hey, like poke holes in what I'm saying. And I actually did that live in front of a group of educators recently with a blog post I wrote about Flipgrid and just like the perils of just free tools being offered by large corporations in K-12 settings. And it poked really good holes in my paper. Like I was kind of embarrassed to do it publicly because I was like, oh yeah, there are some really serious flaws in my logic here. And like, that's an example of, I think maybe of what you're getting at, of like, this would have been really hard to pull off, to have this sort of interaction prior to ChatGPT, because you'd have to go, like, I'd have to ask my wife or friends, but hey, can you read this paper and like analyze it and give me feedback? Like, that's a big ask. Whereas now it's like, because let's be real, nobody wants to read Adam's like 2-page rant about Flipgrid. But now I have this like partner that is deep, like truly deeply challenging my thinking. And even last night, like I was kind of trying to prepare for this conversation, and I've been doing some reading around just like the philosophy of writing and how it changed human thought. And like, I was able to have such a deep conversation about but all of that is predicated on the fact that I have background knowledge in some of this stuff, and I have skills and I have motivation to want to do that. Just like you guys have motivation and skills and all the things that you need to have those. Like, you just had a really good pithy expression about like, what did you say? It's like not thinking deeper, or it's like doing better things.
Oh, you said not doing things better, but doing better things.
Yeah, exactly. You all are equipped with the background knowledge and skills and expertise to do the better things once you're exposed to, the opportunities and things available to you. I don't know if our kids are like our kids. We have to make sure they have those baseline skills first before they can do these incredible things with AI. And sometimes I think that gets lost. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of where my mind went when you said that.
You mentioned, did I start talking before I had my microphone on?
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm a professional. Now, you mentioned the term AI literacy, and we've been talking, I think it was just last week. I was like, we need to come up with a new term. I don't like that term.
Yeah.
What do you think AI literacy means? What do you think about that term?
I have very mixed feelings. I think it's a very useful term in the sense that it's just a quick catch-all for like making sense of AI. Like we as a society, we need to make sense of AI, and this is the term we're using to sort of reference that. But so it's useful in that sense, and that's why I find myself using it, even though I do have some qualms with it. The qualms being, it is so broad that like it almost doesn't have meaning. I've gone to so many conferences, and with like literally the panel person, the moderator will be like, all right, define AI literacy, and you'll get 4 different definitions from 4 different people, and they're all these long convoluted things that don't really make any sense. And it does sometimes feel like AI literacy is just basically digital citizenship skills we've been teaching for a long time, of just cross-referencing information, being critical evaluators, of like reading laterally and not vertically, and blah, blah, blah. Like all these things that I hopefully have been a part of school districts' digital citizenship curriculum for a while, paired with content knowledge. Like when you really start to ask like why, and you do this sort of like first principles thinking around what AI literacy is, it kind of just feels like it's content knowledge in whatever domain you're using AI for. Like my wife is a senior software developer. She's able to use AI effectively in her workflow because she already knew how to code extremely well. So she can use AI to make her 10 times more productive, because when it screws up, she knows where it screwed up and she can fix it or not use it or throw it, whatever.
Yell at it.
Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
She yells at the AI.
Yeah, she yells at it. Scolds it and gets into an argument. No, but like she knows how to use it because she was a senior software developer. She has the skills. If you don't know how to code at all and you hop onto ChatGPT and are like, code me a website, it can do that, but it's going to break. And when it breaks, you're not going to know how to fix it because you don't have those skills. So are you AI literate, quote unquote? I don't know. Like you definitely know how to prompt a machine to do this thing for you. But if you don't actually have the skills to then make sense of those outputs, are you? So then that kind of draws into question, like, what is AI? If AI literacy is just content knowledge, then do we need a term for it? Isn't that what we're already developing in our classrooms? Like, that's what I think about with writing. It's like, in order for you to use AI effectively in your writing, you have to be an effective writer. Like, you have to know what your voice is. You have to know how to use language in certain ways. And so I do sometimes, the cynical side of me wonders how much of AI literacy is just a term made up by consultants so they can sell consulting services around AI. You know what I mean?
It seems like a hype term.
Yeah. It becomes buzzy very quickly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do want to acknowledge, like, there is usefulness in having a term for just a catch-all term of like making sense of AI. So I still find myself using it. Like I just,
that's why I said we have to come up with something better.
Exactly.
But go ahead. I just, along that line, I was reading, and oh gosh, I wish I could remember it. I was reading a post this morning on LinkedIn that somebody was talking about like prompt engineering and being good at prompt engineering. And it's like, it's not about that. It's about knowing how to identify a problem, knowing how to question to get the answers you're looking for. So it's like a lot of the stuff that we're doing to enable us to use AI to get the best out of it and to use it for opportunities is stuff we're already doing. But I think we think it's this whole new thing and, we got to have all these new skills, but I don't really think that's the case.
I generally agree with you. And I think and I apologize if you're hearing beeping in the background. I think it comes from a good place of like, I think we're rightfully very nervous about AI and what it means for the labor market and what it means for critical thinking and all the things, so I think it all comes from a good place of wanting to get in front of the risks that AI poses. So I don't want to like overlook that. But I do sometimes think we're overcomplicating it. Like I saw some posts recently that I also agreed with. That I can't remember who was writing this, but it was like, did we ever teach kids like search engine literacy? Did we ever teach kids like electricity? Like when electricity came out, do we have to teach electricity literacy, or did you just go flip the switch on and now you know how to use electricity? You know what I mean? It sometimes feels that way with AI in similar ways. But at the same time, I also recognize like, AI does have a lot of flaws that we should explicitly teach kids so we can mitigate it. So it's I don't know, it's about finding middle ground and balance, I guess.
That's what I've had to do recently. I had to scrap the term AI literacy. We just did a survey and there were a bunch of folks that responded that they want nothing to do with AI. They don't want to use it with their students. And I had to reframe for them that I'm not there necessarily to talk to them about using it with their students. I want them to be AI informed. So we scrapped the literacy statement because that implies a proficiency with it. Whereas AI Informed for our context was much more received because it was about understanding it, knowing about it, just like bias. We teach about bias. It doesn't mean that we want people to be biased. It means that we're teaching them about it so they're informed and they understand the complexities of that, and then they can make good decisions, right? So we've had to really shift on that in a big way. And we've been kicking around like we've got to come up with a new term, and then we'll market it. And then we'll be branded on T-shirts, and then we'll be good.
Well, I want to, but that's wise though on your part that you're like, just the fact that an administrator is listening to what their teachers are saying and adjusting accordingly. I think that's powerful and meeting them where they're at. Sometimes I think that's getting lost, especially amongst the kind of AI hype crowd that sometimes has a tendency to be like, you're an idiot if you're not using AI right now, and like that sort of rhetoric doesn't help the teachers.
Not at all.
I have tried that a few times and not once has it worked. Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not surprised.
Yes. But I think a small part of the knowledge people need, or the understanding, is that AI is not thinking. This generative AI stuff is not, and I think that's part of why it's easy to get feedback from AI, because it has no malice. I can't take it personally because there's nothing there. And well, although my co-hosts here were destroyed by the brutal prompt, which I was very, very unlike me, just able to brush off like uncaringly like a machine myself. But I think, and that's part of what scares me for kids and the character AI thing is like, they need to understand there's actually nothing there.
But you're pointing out something really interesting, that like the depersonalization thing is obviously scary depending on the context you're using it, but it can also be a really valuable affordance of it. It's literally just a neutral third party.
Which is
depending on how you use it, obviously.
Yeah. So like your example showing, if you showed if I show Renee, my wife, something, that I've worked on, and then she said, like, if I get one thing that is just critical in the wrong tone, then I am like hurt, then I'm bothered. That's my brutal response. But then AI could tell me 7 things that totally sucked about whatever I did. And I'm like, it's right. I'll just fix those things up. And like, whereas Renee probably saw 12 things. She told me 1 thing. But, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, and just think about like there's tremendous metacognitive benefit in just reflecting on your different reaction to the feedback that you get from whatever, a coworker, a spouse, versus the feedback you get from AI, and why that reaction is different. But that's a whole other conversation.
I don't think Sean's necessarily the sample that we would want to use for that.
Would not be a good sample, but this also.
You know what it is, Sean, though? You know what it is?
What?
One of our guests, Adam, told us that AI is a reflection of you. So Sean's okay with criticizing himself, not so much when anyone else is critical.
Well, actually, it feels like as far as receiving feedback, AI feedback is the least hurtful. And then myself is like on the other side. But this is also, you have to be careful, right? Because of how ChatGPT. So it reminds me, okay, I have a lot of thoughts. Like that Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus, where did you see that, Adam?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this I can't go into the full thing, but it was cool. The best thing about the episode was that they remixed the Nine Inch Nails song in kind of a pop style. But aside from that, this girl learned to dance from her like AI doll that was like giving her feedback, and then she went to do it in front of a live audience and just bombed, even though she got a lot of positive reinforcement, which is kind of like a lot of what was happening with ChatGPT lately before they rolled it back, where it was like, wow, you really nailed it. You know what? Good for you.
Yeah.
So where was I going with this, Adam?
I don't know, Sean, but I've got some feedback for you after.
I was excited. I just got excited. Sorry. I think it was Black Mirror.
So Adam, to close us out,
yeah,
where is you've got a lot going on. Your tool is evolving, your thinking is evolving, particularly around writing and voice. What's your trajectory for the next couple of months? Where are you focusing your energy and your brain?
Making it really easy to embed writing not in English classrooms, like in social studies and math and science and across the curriculum. Because what is interesting about that challenge is what I'm saying is like making it easy to embed writing in classrooms where the teacher doesn't necessarily want to teach writing. It's a really interesting design challenge of like, how do I design a writing tool for a teacher who does not want to teach writing? Like, and I'm not saying all, social studies, science, math, electives teachers don't want to teach writing, but there are many of them that don't want to teach writing, and like understandably so. Like they already have way too much content to cover and not enough time to cover it. And so now Adam's coming in and saying, you got to teach writing too. Like, I understand why I get eye rolls. So it's like, how can we do that? How can we embed high quality explicit writing instruction in places where teachers don't necessarily want to do that? That's where all my thinking goes. We have some ideas, and I think AI is going to be a huge part of what that solution looks like, because AI is really great at automating tasks that teachers don't necessarily want to do. But then the challenge becomes there, like, can we automate those tasks in a way that's actually meaningful for kids and actually meaningful for instruction and learning outcomes? And so, yeah, it's just trying to solve that challenge. How do we get teachers who don't want to teach writing to teach writing? Because I think if we're going to save core writing skills, and when I say save, I mean not let AI just erase the art and science of writing. We're going to have to make up for lost writing practice that's going to result. And in order to do that, we have to embed it across the curriculum. And in order to embed it across the curriculum, got to make it really simple and easy and effective and fun. And that's really hard. So that's what my summer will look like. And I'm excited to, if you'll have me back on, to hopefully talk about the solutions that we end up landing on, because we're still very much like in design and prototype with a lot of our features that we plan to roll out in the next year. But maybe in 6 months to a year, we can talk again and I can share those things with you.
Awesome. Does it have to be that long?
Oh man,
Sean's getting on a roll here. He wants to get back into this. Yeah, no,
I'm going to come on and talk about the philosophy of it, because I've gone down like a rabbit hole of like reading like somewhat pretentious like philosophy books and things on just like the meaning of writing and how it has how it restructured thought when it became widespread, and all sorts of things around just how technology shapes thinking. But that's interesting, and that's like whole rabbit holes of thought that I've never would have gone down if it hadn't been for AI. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Well, none of us go down rabbit holes, so that's hard for us to relate to, but that sounds like a terrible problem. So